Very nicely as these words spill out of my mouth, Rhyno is back on WWE TV again properly. And it may be somewhat of a comedy angle with Heath Slater, but I don't care. I like Rhyno a lot. As long as my eyes can see him, I'm a happy chap. He also adds value to any roster given his tenure in the wrestling business and how good he remains despite heading towards the end of his career, and the stories the man beast must have. Would like an Xmas tree. Whatever that means. When you've been going for as long as Rhyno has though, there's always a few things that you'd probably like to forget. So, I'm Simon from What Culture and this is 10 things WWE wants you to forget about Rhyno. Number 10, walked out on Heath Slater. We all know that WWE has a problem every now and then when it comes to storylines, or more specifically, dropping them without any reason as to why. We're all just supposed to pretend they were never a thing and move on with our lives, and we do of course, but it doesn't mean it's not irksome. So if we turn the clock back to December 2016, the duo of Rhyno and Heath Slater had just lost their tag team titles to Bray Wyatt and Randy Orton, and then screwed up their rematch as well. So that was that, they'd have to start again. Before that, however, they went on Talking Smack where the one-man band told Rhyno it was his fault because he was the guy that had been pinned. The former EC champion was disgusted by Heath's selfish behaviour, and he walked out on him, and it got worse when Slater accidentally eliminated Rhyno from a battle royal the following week. Everything looked terrible. Apparently though, it wasn't. There was no resolution to this, no climax, it just stopped being a thing on TV, and by the end of December all was right in their world again. It was like nothing had happened. It wasn't even referenced, and we were all basically asked to forget about it. Well, we didn't, and now we're bringing it up again. Number 9, he pitched Muhammad Hassan. Muhammad Hassan was a character we'd all like to forget really given how it was handled. What started as an ill-advised, depressed Arab-American idea soon devolved into a full-on terrorist that I don't think anybody wanted to see. It was just bad, especially when incidents on SmackDown tied into actual real-world events. It caused so much controversy, as it should, it basically ended Hassan's wrestling career, and he's now just a story for us all to tell when we want to drive home that WWE can be nuts on occasion. It was Rhyno who provided the original Muhammad Hassan blueprint, however, as he revealed in an interview the following year. WWE originally dismissed it, but the character eventually made it to television, and while the offensive direction they went in was not what Rhyno had in his own mind, in many ways, the gimmick may not have existed had he not come up with it. Number 8, he was going to be Edge and Christian's brother. Thankfully, a lot of ideas never leave the WWE writers' room, and that's definitely for the best. They're so bad you have to worry why they were even brought up to begin with. One of these was most definitely the first concept for Rhyno as he arrived on the WWE scene. The rumour was that he was going to be Edge and Christian's older brother. And let's face it, that makes no sense. Wrestling is filled with fake families. When you've already established that one brother is Edge, a tall dude with long blonde hair, and the other brother is Christian, a slightly not so tall dude but with long blonde hair, how does a shorter dark-haired dude who looks nothing like either of them work? It doesn't. It would be like saying Jason Jordan was Kurt Angle's kid. Also, a large portion of the audience would have known Rhyno from his ECW days, so that's another hurdle to try and ignore. Talk about stacking the deck. Instead, Rhyno simply aligned himself with ENC, which was a far better move, and worked well in the long term. Thank goodness. Number 7, he got fired. Rhyno's second WWE run wasn't as eventful as his first. Coming back from a neck injury in February 2003, he had a brief team with Chris Benoit before drifting into the mid-card. From there we didn't see him much, and it did seem likely that there weren't any plans for him, and that always spells disaster. This hit in April 2005 when he had a public argument with his wife at the WrestleMania 21 after party, which led to his contract being cancelled. Bit harsh. He did pop up at ECW's One Night Stand pay-per-view a month later, because he had to, but that was it for the WWE and he didn't come back until 2016. Now we don't know the details of the row, but Rhyno has publicly admitted to losing his cool that night, adding in that if he was Vince, he'd have fired him too. And that's why Rhyno rocks, because he's honest to the end. Number 6, he added to, but didn't make ECW. One for the diehards to argue this, but most ECW loyalists tell you that the best days at the company were between 1995 and 1998. This was when its cult reputation was sorted and when Paul Heyman could do no wrong. If you wanted a different product to the mainstream, here it was, in your face. That doesn't mean Rhyno wasn't an important part of its history, but he didn't join ECW until 1999 when, as said, a few people thought maybe things were on a downward turn. That doesn't mean bad. Means not as good. From a WWE point of view, they'd rather you forget about this, as they've always pitched him as an ECW original. It's not entirely the case. Rhyno made a mark there, but it did come after things had already kicked off. Number 5, him setting a belt on fire in TNA. The power of nostalgia was all the rage in 2006, so much so that TNA decided to embrace the memories of ECW and to do so with Rhyno. During a period where WWE was also trying to get that pot going with their WWE ECW brand, Rhyno appeared on TNA television and threw the original EC title in the trash, and he set it on fire. Alright bro, calm down. This on some level was clearly meant to be a shot at what was happening with the competition, but when it turned out that this was merely a replica and the big reveal was that Rhyno still had the actual belt at home, well, it kind of made it all seem pointless. TNA really didn't use Rhyno to his full potential either, which is why WWE also wants you to forget number 4, his entire TNA run. As we know, WWE ignoring TNA has been a thing for a while. Vince McMahon has no-sold the promotion for years, right down to some wrestlers just having no career, when in fact they were in TNA. Drips and drabs are flickered out here and there, but mostly you don't talk about Fight Club and you don't talk about TNA and WWE. It's not like that doesn't make sense. They're competition, no matter how much smaller, so why even go to any lengths to acknowledge them? The counterpoint to this is when you start talking about the likes of AJ Styles, Samoa Joe and Bobby Roode. It would be nice to mention it then, because it's so important to those guys' careers. Like loads of WWE guys too, Rhyno spent about as much time there as he did in WWE, and he became world champ during his first run. Just seems mad to delete a large chunk of the man's life. This is exactly what they'd like you to do. Number 3, he was boring, apparently. Vince McMahon is the be-all and end-all. We know. And if you want to do well in the WWE, you got to impress him. There's countless stories about this and even visual proof with documentaries. It's his road or no road. Apparently Rhyno did something to irk the boss in 2003 because as he was wrestling Tajiri at a random house show, McMahon marched down the ramp and stopped the match from nowhere. As both performers looked at him confused because this hadn't been planned, it turned out that Vince had agreed with the crowd's chants of boring, so decided to end it right there and then. Now the good thing is this didn't happen in front of a TV audience because that would have been far worse, but still, didn't do much for Rhyno's career, and now I would guess WWE would prefer that you didn't remember that. Number 2, he was Santa. The decision to dress Rhyno up as Santa for a December 2016 episode of Talking Smack was, for the most part, spot of harmless fun. Everyone played along and it was good to see Rhyno's funny side. Man is a good sport. However, we also saw him expose his nipple before hitting on Renee Young. That's a bit weird anyway, but on top of that, it set the internet into a frenzy as they saw it as being too problematic for a PG product. As ever, there were rumours that Rhyno had just done this on his own and got in trouble with management, but that was nonsense as he was back doing his thing the following week. But it did make people raise a few eyebrows, and in WWE's corporate sponsor world, that is never good. Number 1, his love of piledrivers, and specifically those he performed on women. Given that WWE won't go anywhere near man-on-woman violence in 2018, there's an almost guarantee they don't want anyone snooping into Rhyno's past and seeing that it was a huge part of his legacy. Portrayed as an unstoppable wild man, one of his character's main traits was that he enjoyed piledriving women through tables of all things. It was pretty tasteless, even for ECW, as Rhyno didn't need to do this to get over, but it happened. The likes of Jasmine St. Clair, Dawn Marie and others all experienced this pain. It's not like WWE couldn't disassociate itself with this, given it really was nothing to do with them, but I bet they'd still like you to forget about it. Just makes it a hell of a lot easier.
Gosh, can you believe that that person said that about that particular video on that entry? I sure can't. But you should like, share and subscribe below anyway. And also, the people who made this video, they're right here. Go follow them and give them some love. Also, there's more content, probably above my head. Check it out. Or don't. 50-50.